Welcome to our Playwell podcast. My name is Sherry Morgan and I am the Director of Projects at Play Scotland, the national organisation for play. Today our Chief Executive Officer, Marguerite Hunter-Blair, speaks to Virginia Radcliffe, the Artistic Director and CEO of Licketyspit, a theatre and play charity focused on early years children and families. Virginia has written and directed 7 successful touring plays as well as teaching resources and children's books. Virginia is passionate about equality, children's rights, the early years and the way play and creativity can support children to prompt families and communities to relax and appreciate each other and remind us what matters. I hope you enjoy their conversation.
Hello, Virginia. It's absolutely lovely to be having this conversation with you today. I can't believe that it's a year since we've actually been together at the IPA conference in Glasgow, which was an amazing experience for everybody. And honestly, what a great turn Licketyspit did for us on children's participation at that conference. So I know you've been really busy since then, and you've been running some fantastic taster sessions very recently in Shots. So I wonder if you'd like to start and tell us a wee bit about what you've been doing recently, and then we can revisit the history of Licketyspit and then we'll go back and maybe talk about how Licketyspit came into being, how it was created and how you've been on this massive journey that took you to Shots in Scotland just last week.
So yeah, we were in Shots last week doing Storyplay school tasters with 6 local schools through a lovely organisation called Spotlight on Shots, who really want to bring the arts to North Lanarkshire. We're sort of part of that scheme. So it was wonderful because they'd got 6 local schools really interested, and they all had CPD on a Monday. And then we went into each school, for one session with a class and with, probably sort of 10 or so parents as well. And it was really very exhausting, but really rewarding and wonderful. How much they enjoyed it and how quickly they got out of their comfort zones, and the kind of eloquent feedback that we got both from the teachers of children and from the parents, who are the least sure people at the start of the sessions.
It's so interesting to hear that, Virginia, because I know when I first met you and got involved with the 2 Margarets, that was one of the things that really struck me about that project was the involvement of the parents towards the end of the project, and just what an incredible impact what you did with the 2 Margarets had on the parents, never mind the children. So I don't know if you still do the 2 Margarets. Is that a programme that you still...
We do LicketyLeap, it's called, because the children leap into the story with Margaret and Margaret. We do it when we get the chance to do it. I mean, that was really the project that took Licketyspit from being, strictly speaking, a theatre company, producing plays and touring them all over Scotland, into, really kind of early intervention, because all of the plays that I've written have been developed with early years children. And that really started right back in 2000, when I got the job as the early years director for a company called We Stories. And I just not long moved to Scotland with my Scottish partner and my 2 children, who were early years children. And this amazing job came up that just had, they were looking for somebody with exactly my experiences, which is that I was an experienced actor. I'd been involved in running theatre companies and producing theatre, and I had some experience with early years children because I'd written a play with an actor friend of mine to do children's birthday parties called Birdman and Mrs. Moon. And I'd been really struck by how easy it was to underestimate early years children and what they're able to do and what they want to do, what they're interested in and what matters to them. So when I got this job at We Stories, it was like a sort of dream job, really. I would have moved to Scotland to do it. And I felt very unsure because I'd never really written a play before. I hadn't really directed before either. But I had this instinct that the thing to do was to consult children about how to do it. And my daughter was in Leith Walk Nursery, and the nursery very kindly allowed me to go in with my other actor and station manager to develop a show with the children. And
that must be what makes it so interesting and captivating. And this idea that, because everyone knows the confident Margaret and everybody knows the anxious Margaret, because we're actually that person. We're all part of that in ourselves. And the fact that children have helped to co-produce that story with you is just amazing.
Totally. I mean, I think it's incredibly liberating as an artist to consult children to create work, because really all we worried about was doing something that they would be really excited about, that would be meaningful for them, and that we would be really excited about as artists, and we would find very creative and satisfying. And that was, we didn't worry about what any adults thought at all. And we just thought that's what's important. And if we get that right, then it'll work. And it absolutely did work. And it was very liberating, because it, very often in the arts, it's so competitive, and you're constantly being sort of judged, and it's easy to get sort of anxious and think that it's all about you. And actually the liberating thing about working for children is that it's all about them. And there's no time for you to think about yourself. And that actually means that what you're really focusing on is being creative. And it's interesting, actually, because a big element of our current work with Storyplay and the way that we engage with children is that we want to remove the barriers to them being creative. We don't want them to be worried about when it's their turn or how good they are in comparison to anybody else. We just want them to sort of access their imaginations. And I suppose that's what we've been doing right from the beginning.
Definitely caught on. Nowadays, I would say that we should all be co-producing with children, young people, and co-developing, whether it's local place plans, whether it's what children want to do in after school or in playtime. But in actual fact, co-production and co-development is incredibly challenging. And usually, in my experience, it comes back to having to, no matter what it comes out of that co-production, it then has to fit into the adult direction, agenda, for want of a better word. So it is so liberating that you were able to keep it away from the adults completely, so that by the time the parents get involved, they're seeing the children's work as opposed to in any way shaping it or inhibiting it. When parents say, oh, I didn't know my child could do that, or would have told you, oh, they don't have the confidence, or they don't like doing that, they don't want to do that. The inhibitors have all been removed, and the children can do and be what they want.
But I think that one of the hardest things for early years children and for people working with early years children is that the way that we get to know people, is we get to know them and we add up the knowledge that we have about them. And therefore, you always, when you walk into a nursery, on the whole, somebody will say, oh, well, this child will really love what you're doing. They're very creative. That child really doesn't like drama. And that child's very, very quiet, and that child never speaks. And even though we know that we mustn't label children, especially early years children who are changing daily, if not hourly, it's really hard not to. And the opportunity that you have as a new group of people going in is to give that possibility for change. And even just by being new people, you are an opportunity for change. And so then it becomes about earning the trust of the other adults that are there to allow you to do that. And actually at the root of our work and why it has this sort of very big accelerated impact on the children that work with us is because of the connection between actors and children as people who are completely at ease with imaginary play. And I suppose our actor-pedagogues already have that, but what they have to learn is the nuance of children's rights-based engagement that we have learned through doing this work, really.
And what's really fascinating for me in seeing it in action was the children, you telling me about the children that some of their teachers had said they won't enjoy that, or they won't like that, or they don't speak. Some of those children were the ones who just had been transformed by the experience.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, we're so quick, and we're doing it usually in really good faith, saying, please don't annoy that child, they don't like that, they don't like the sensory stimulation. And the adults are saying that because they've had experience of it. They're not saying it just because they've made it up,
Yeah.
You seem to be able to unlock. And I think that's what's so fascinating about what you do and really intrigues us. And I know we're going to talk about some of the lovely projects and programs that you do, but really this analysis of how you've come up with, it's not a formula, but a way of working with children and young people that allows them to behave in a way they choose to behave in that moment, and then they might go back to being the quiet child.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think it's because we have sort of stumbled onto something that we learned how to consult children, and children kind of know what they need. I think that what we've learned through these projects particularly through LicketyLeap. I mean, but essentially we do now have a formula for Storyplay, and we can go and play with absolutely anyone, and we can say with absolute confidence that anyone will play with us. So there is now a blueprint that we can share, and that we know how to teach people how to do. And it is a nuanced and detailed blueprint, but it's come from discovering that everybody wants to play, and having and once you know that, then everyone will play with you. But you can't just know that by somebody telling you. You have to experience it, and you have to experience the people who don't look like they want to play showing you that they do want to play. So it is. I think it's an art to be able to that you can develop, but I think that everybody can develop it really. And actually, everybody working with children should have that level of confidence that they can sort of tweak the way that they engage with them in order to unlock them, enable them to be themselves. And I think that the very heartening thing about particularly LicketyLeap is that because they have this very intense experience that does unlock them, but because they do it with everybody really important in their lives, which is their parents witness it, or their carers witness it, their teachers witness it, and experience it with them, and crucially their peers do too, then it's very hard for them to revert to the way that they were before. And the sort of feedback we constantly get, and we actually got it last week in shots, is that some of the more confident children are quieter when they first do this work. And we think that that's because they're taken aback to see all the normally quiet children having so much to contribute. But of course, afterwards, we then regularly, always with LicketyLeap, hear how they play in bigger groups, and they're much more successful at managing big group independent play than they were before. And because everybody has discovered how great everyone is to play with, the play is much richer and much easier to navigate than it was before.
Well, we know that play is a very natural, instinctive thing, but it does take facilitators, it does take play workers, play pedagogues, people like yourselves, the actor pedagogues as well, to facilitate and help unlock what everyone's got inside them.
Well, I think it's definitely been a learning process, and I was quite self-conscious. Basically we were doing all these plays and there was no fourth wall and there was lots of interaction, but nevertheless there was an audience and there was a stage with actors on it. And we realised through our developmental sessions that led to those plays, children most loved doing more than anything with us was going into big imaginary adventures, improvisations, but that they were incredibly hard to manage because everybody wanted to speak at the same time and the same children were dominant, the same children weren't getting a look in, and we couldn't possibly respond to the amount of imagination and excitement that was coming at us. So really LicketyLeap was in response to that. We'd also had children coming on stage in the middle of our shows and saying, no, you don't understand it. The hare hasn't won the race, that they didn't see that fourth wall either. So we thought, well, obviously early morning children really want to be in our stories. And what would that be? And how can we create something where they can have real agency, but still come out of it with something really satisfying that's a collective creation that they can go away and tell the story of. And that was our challenge with LicketyLeap. But I felt quite self-conscious because at the time I was working in nurseries where the big thing was absolutely for adults not to interfere with children's play. And I do think that's a very important freedom that children need to have, of course. They need to have opportunities for free play. But I've also always been aware because I've always worked in areas of very high challenge. And so I felt, well, actually the children that were coming to see our shows, some of them really needed that too. And they didn't have somebody there saying, come on, you can do it, you can do it. So that was kind of partly the thinking behind LicketyLeap. And we went into nurseries and experimented and we tried all sorts of things, didn't work at all. We tried going in character and they were all absolutely horrified and aghast. But in the end, they led us to sort of develop this. Well, it's, as LicketyLeap, it's quite a sort of big story to tell, really. But, it starts with us just saying, theatre is just about actors. We don't read you the story. We don't tell you the story. We show you the story, and we're actors. We pretend to be the people in the story, just like when you dress up and pretend to be people in your own stories. okay, so what do you like to dress up as? And then you start the story, you know, and then we find the pictures of the Margarets and we all speculate about who they are, and they notice in the pictures that one of them's worried and one of them's not. And then we realize that the actors are a bit like the characters, and then the actors try being the characters, and then they become the characters, and then the characters take the children into the world of the story. And all the things that worried Margaret's been worried about happen, but they can be overcome. And happy Margaret realizes that life is a little bit more complex than she thought. But we never set out to create a piece of holistic work, you know, that would liberate children and be an early intervention. We really just thought, you know, can we make a show that children can be in?
And I'm just thinking, Virginia, everything that you've been talking about, we know has helped improve children's play opportunities and their social contact in the playground. But I'm also thinking, as you're speaking, when children start to act out stories, it really helps with their creative writing. You know, it helps with so many things then, their brain development, their emotional regulation, you know, their general health and well-being.
Yeah, well, with LicketyLeap, we got some funding very early on from the Early Years Early Action Fund through Inspiring Scotland, which was quite astonishing, actually. I think it was the first time a piece of theatre had been funded as early intervention in that way. And we got a lot of help to develop how we evaluated. And so there was quite a robust way of evaluating that the teachers did, and they would select for the children in the highest level of need, and the work was always done in areas of high need. And they would track them for confidence, social skills, emotional literacy, and resilience. And in fact, originally it was problem solving, but then we changed it when we worked with the schools on attainment to use knowledge of language. And so they would answer a series of questions based on each of those outcomes before the children came anywhere near us, and then after we'd finished. But alongside that, we practiced reflective practice ourselves, and we'd also talk to the children. We would capture lots of the children's input and lots of the parents' input, so we could get quite a kind of good, it's not triangulated, is it? Because there's 4 different elements, but quite a kind of good 3D view of what the impact was. But the teachers consistently showed that sort of more or less about 90% of the children who participate showed an improvement or a marked improvement across all those 4 outcomes. But of course, as soon as we started putting that in funding applications, people just didn't believe us. And we actually had an amazing senior health practitioner in Edinburgh, so I don't understand it, you know. And this is really robust evaluation. Nursery teachers saying this is changing children's lives, but it was still quite difficult. And we did get a study done called Leaping Into Ourselves by an academic called Stephanie Knight, who's also a sort of applied theatre practitioner. And that really was why we managed to get that initial government funding, because she identified that, you know, what was happening in all the different layers to the children that were doing it. And we realized that the children had somehow led us to create this really symbolic story. They travel through the bog, over the sea, into the cave and up the mountain to find their heart's desire, you know, and everybody does. And everybody has this great sense of achievement. And in a way, that could be our lives, couldn't it?
One of the things that also fascinated me about Licketyspit was the work you did during COVID. So I would love you to tell us a wee bit about what you did, how you overcame the most amazing challenges to work with children and families at that time.
So, well, just to give you a little bit of background, so on the back of LicketyLeap, a lot of parents said, how can we carry on doing work like this with our children? How can our children keep doing it? Because they were seeing their children in a different light and feeling very excited about it. And so the games and rhymes and songs and imaginary play activities that I've been using to develop my plays, I turned into a set of play cards. And the Lickety play cards, there are 32 actually, but we have sets of 16. And they're a set of games and rhymes and songs and imaginary play activities, lots of them that you would know or adapted versions of traditional old ones, and some new ones that I've invented together with games and songs and playground rhymes. We got permission to use jelly on his head from the guy who gave it to the singing kettle, all that kind of thing. And actually what we found is that the games give the same sort of structure that the script of LicketyLeap gives. So LicketyLeap has this secure structure of the script and the dialogue, which is always the same between Margaret and Margaret, but it also has many, many opportunities where all the children are talked to. And we just do it with 10 children because we discovered that 10 children are happy to wait until it's their turn, as they know they'll never be forgotten. And inclusivity is the absolute key to Storyplay and to our practice. and it has to be really, really rigorous. And what is fascinating about this, Marguerite, is that I would love someone to come and write about is that there's a generic we've done this work with thousands and thousands of children all over Scotland, and there's such a generic nature to the kind of imaginary play that children share. And we don't get any characters from anything an adult has invented. We don't get anybody from Disney. We don't get Thomas. We don't get the Frozen. Well, I can't think what her name is from Frozen. But none of that comes into this imaginary play. We play flying balloons and we fly over where we live and we fly over the whole world and we see unbelievable things happening. Or in the Magic Ball, we go to unbelievable places like the Earth's core or under the ocean. And we do very ordinary things like have cups of tea and go swimming. So we've got these games and we do this session called Porridge and Play with groups of families with 3 to 8 year olds and plus their siblings if they want to come. So often it's 0 to 14 year olds and parents. And we've got Porridge and Play hubs in sort of 6 different areas of Glasgow. But we also now have an online hub, and that was because during the pandemic, we have a children families network because families get really excited about Storyplay and they really get it. So we've got a children families network that we've had since probably about 2008 or 9. And it has a sort of rolling population. We're probably working with about 200 families at any one time, but that we've got about 1,100 families in it at the moment. And when the pandemic struck, we thought, well, we can't possibly, we're about to start a new block of Porridge and Play, which are sessions where we play and we eat together and then we reflect together about it. And we also go off and do it in other places, in museums or galleries or outdoors. We call it Picnic and Play. And we thought, oh, well, we can't possibly do it because of the pandemic. We got in touch with the lottery, who are our main funders, and said, can we put this on hold for a bit? And then through the network, we got desperate messages from our families, particularly from the refugee families that we work with, because our sessions are really characterized by being extremely welcoming and open and non-judgmental. And so people feel very at ease in them. And so they really have always attracted new Scots. They also attracted people with children who have additional support needs because they know that they won't feel awkward, in the sessions. They'll feel very supported. And so it was particularly the new Scots who got in touch because they didn't have family in Scotland, and with the pandemic, many of them were completely isolated in their family unit. And they were also, many of them didn't have digital access. They were worried about keeping up with school or just being in touch with anybody. So we managed to get some grants to get hold of some digital connectivity and devices. And we brought some of our families into a Zoom call to help us to start to work out how on earth we could do this play online. And we really weren't at all sure that we could, but we absolutely could, and we can, and we still do. And it was really interesting because there was one child I remember came in and said, I think we should play A Letter to My Love. And I didn't see how we can play A Letter to My Love online. Emmanuel said, I've got it all worked out. Now what we have to do is this, and to write the name on a bit of paper, everyone closes their eyes, and actually it's incredible. And it absolutely took off, although to begin with, we would have 100 screens and we would soon realize that we couldn't have that many because people expect to be included in a Licketyspit session and there just wasn't time to include 100 screens, so then we had to just do more sessions and have smaller groups. But what was so fascinating was how children still managed to make friends, even with the constraints of being in a Zoom that was controlled by us, that they found ways to sort of reflect what each other were doing and admire and build in each other's ideas into their own imaginary play. And it was quite amazing.
It was so impressive, Virginia. And I feel now that we all feel we've moved on from COVID, we haven't paid enough attention to some of the most amazing, innovative practice that happened. And you definitely encapsulate that, and being able to support refugee families and others, that had language difficulties, as you said. They didn't have a wider family to give them any support. It was just absolutely fantastic what you did at that time. Now, I also would love to talk a bit about the Storyplay Festival that you're running again this year in Glasgow. If you'd like to tell us a bit about that, that would be super.
Well, following the online work, we got funded by the government through the New Scots integration programme for a year to do a project which we actually did in 3 communities that could be accessed by lots of our new families that joined during the pandemic who didn't live near our other hubs. And we were able to work with them for a whole year and not only do porridge and play sessions, but also do explore where their play came from. And these were groups with 50% New Scots and 50% long-term Scottish families. And that's another thing that we really notice about our work is how much people enjoy each other. You know, that it's an awful lot about just creating the space for people to meet and play together, and actually that people love meeting and playing with each other and are incredibly generous and kind to each other. And in these sessions, because we had a chance to work with them so much, we kind of explored where people came from and how they played when they were children and how the parents used to play, and people taught each other games, you know, and one brilliant mum from Pran Hill, who's a white Scottish mum who taught us this fantastic game where you throw an imaginary ball over your shoulder and somebody catches it and then you have to guess who's caught it, you know, which is a game that she'd invented in the East End of Glasgow because they got fed up with getting their ball taken off them when they were playing. You know, to another game, Willy, 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 Willy-O, which is a lovely singing call and response, hilarious game from a mum from Nigeria. And so we collected all these new games, and we had this Storyplay festival that was hosted by them, by families from those 3 communities in particular in Pran Hill, Bridgeton, Castlemilk in 2022. And invited our families from all over Glasgow to come and join in with this play. And we also had lovely food and a great big feast. And Play Scotland was there as well. And it was a really lovely day. And so we're having our second one in July at the Children's Wood, who we're working in partnership now with Children's Wood Kelvin Meadow, which is wonderful because we're going to have an opportunity to build dens and, you know, for each of the different hub communities to sort of have a space where they do the things that they want to do. So yeah, we're getting ready for that.
So the last thing I wanted just to touch on, I know you've got a fantastic new project now called Lickety Movers.
Yeah.
So would you like to tell us a wee bit about Lickety Movers?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you about Lickety Movers. I'd love to also quickly tell you about Have Your Say Through Play as well. As you mentioned, you know, we were involved with the IPA, amazing IPA conference. And in fact, we're very delighted we're going to be writing a chapter for the book on play in Scotland that's coming out of that. But out of the pandemic also came this project, Have Your Say Through Play, because we were working with so many families online. We got asked to consult them about the impact of COVID. And to do that, we adapted our games. And we realised that we could play What's the Time, Mr. No Rights Wolf. And, you know, we could play Letter to My Love and write letters about what had happened to them during the pandemic. And we've since been asked to do that in fact, we did a consultation, I think, for Play Scotland about the importance of play using that. So that's still something that we've done recently. We did another government consultation with some P1 children in Mary Hill, they were amazing, what they had to say, you know, about their rights.
But it's very challenging. It's not easy. And I think the work you do gives children the confidence to have their voice heard. As you say, it's all part of this feeling that what they say matters, that they're important too. And it's fantastic. So tell us now about Lickety Movers then, Virginia. Your latest fantastic idea. Tell us all about it.
Well, Lickety Movers is really the idea of has Ichasa Moreno, who's one of our lead actor-pedagogues. He's been doing Storyplay since the beginning and is really brilliant at it. And in response to, you know, when we do porridge and play sessions, we have whole families and we have many, many children under 3. And there's something that happens when children are 3. There are things that you can do when you're 3. You can pretty much guarantee that 3-year-olds will enjoy X, Y, or Z. But with under 3s, you absolutely can't. It depends on them and you shouldn't expect that. So when people bring under 3s, quite often we have to give them a lot of support to enable them to join in with Storyplay, which is something where everybody needs to get a fair turn, and we have to think about the group as a whole and the individuals within a group too. But it means that a child who finds it difficult to stand in a circle and take turns can find it quite challenging. And actually there are all these children, and also children with additional support needs, who need to be able to run, and children who've just had little siblings who are feeling a bit put out, or children who are the youngest in the family who feel they don't quite get enough of their mum as they want to get. Us was very much wanting to respond to this and she is very skilled artist as a mover. She's done lots of movement theatre and acrobatics and things. So she did some training in a new thing. I don't know how long it's been around. It's a discipline called Contour Kids that she went and did some training in, and she's combining that with Storyplay for these new movement-based sessions for parents and children together. So it's for a group of maybe 10 mums and a child aged 2 to 5. So it's children who can walk and run under 5, really. And if that's all they want to do, they just want to run around for the whole session, that's absolutely fine. But actually they get more and more drawn into these wonderful, rolling and being rolled by their mums and turning their mums into a pizza and doing all sorts of group work and stretching and going, falling down on the floor and breathing and shouting and then sitting around and eating fruit and chatting. And we've just literally done the first 2 days of this pilot, and the feedback's been absolutely incredible immediately. So we're very excited about that.
Virginia, I'm sure lots of people will be listening to this podcast and thinking, this is just what our organisation needs. This is just what our project should be involved in. So can you tell us how people could get involved with Licketyspit?
Well, obviously there's lots of information on our website about our Storyplay Schools programme and about how to join the Children and Families Network if you're a family. We do offer training, and we were very lucky actually again during the pandemic. Although we've done lots of CPD with early years practitioners and with teachers, we'd rarely had enough time to really kind of teach people the art of storyplay. But we did have this fantastic opportunity through Scottish Women's Aid to train some of their workers online in sort of, I think, 12 different areas of Scotland, using Storyplay to support their clients and their children. And that really enabled us to work out how, the most efficient way to really teach people how to use Storyplay. And actually, we discovered to our delight and joy what a trauma-informed approach it is. But we also now have kind of got a handbook that's nearly finished, which is going to make it much easier for us to train other people to do it. The thing that makes it always work is doing it in a team of 3 people. So that's the thing, is that people need more than one person in an organisation to really train in it. But training in it doesn't just enable you to lead Storyplay, it also boosts your understanding of children's rights-based engagement and gives you all sorts of scope to incorporate play in, this sort of play into your interactions with children. For instance, the teachers in shots all said that they felt they were going to use what they'd learned. And of course, it's also really great for self-care, for adults to play, because we all need what early years children need. So a lot of the Women's Aid workers said they felt it was both good for themselves and also for them as a team to learn this playing. It's all rooted in the fact that everybody is very creative. We found a way to quickly enable them to get out of their comfort zone and enjoy that. We just want to do that as much as we can.
Virginia, I don't know where you get your imagination from. Rolling your parents into pizza, it just sounds amazing. It's absolutely fantastic. And we just owe you such a great debt, I think, in the play sector for the imagination and innovation that you bring to the work that you do. And it's very energising for us all to see what you do and to hear how you do it. So thank you so much for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule. I do hope you get some downtime during the summer, but thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about Licketyspit.
Well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and for giving us so much support. And we really appreciate it. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Virginia.
Thank you for joining us on this podcast. To find out more about the work of Licketyspit, see the episode information. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your preferred app. To find out more about Play Scotland, please follow us on X @PlayScotland and visit our website at playscotland.org.